Right. I trust that you note the spelling mistake in the first word. I believe it is spelled wrong. But the sentiment is very much clear as to those of you that have seen all the Audi adverts that have come through to most countries all over the world. I want to thank the organizers of this event for bringing me here. I think it's really exciting to be here, and I want to put it into the context of what I believe has given me even more important cause to be here, which is Robert Mugabe's recent declaration that he would be blocking internet access through the commercial ISPs in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe represents something which is something we face all over Africa and probably anywhere else in the developing world. And I think it's important to consider what those implications are around what is currently a very important component to this meeting, which is free wireless access, Freifunk, and so on. And I'm very pleased that the mission of that continues to grow and grow all over the first world. Robert Mugabe drives me to talk about the democracy and economy of scale around what we have built as a model in Namibia over the last 4.5, nearly 5 years. And to put it into the context of what faces you as first world consumers, most of you out here, and what it does to us as end users and also consumers in a developing world, in a third world. I think it's important to keep in mind that worldwide there is a huge amount of electronic waste that is being dumped, and that it's tied in largely around the way that you as consumers are buying this ICT, this electronic technology, this digital technology to make your lives more efficient and more effective, and obviously more entertaining as well. In Germany today, your tonnage per year is around 1 million tons that gets dumped and is effectively generated every year. It works out around 14 kilos per person per year. So that's quite a bit of e-waste. In India, and I'm pleased that Shamir is here, India is now emerging as the world's biggest electronic junkyard. And I think it's important to keep in mind that they are recipients, along with a number of other countries in the Far East, of probably half of the North American e-waste that is being created there. 315 million PCs will become obsolete this year. That means a lot of technology, including 130 to 150 million mobile phones over the next year, and obviously large numbers of other kinds of electronic waste that are being disposed of in various different ways. To look at it on a continent basis, and that means by 1,000 tons per annum, we obviously see that North America is far ahead in terms of what kind of e-waste it's generating. But it's important to note that half of that is being shipped out of the North American countries and taken to the Far East for subsequent recycling in often very difficult circumstance for the children and people that are sub-economic in the way they live their livelihoods. Getting it down to where we are in the context of Namibia, we are active exploiters of electronic waste from the first world. World Computer Exchange, Computer Aid International are effectively brokers for technologies which have reached end of life in the first world, and then deliver them to us, where we refurbish these technologies and give them an extension of life, a new lease on life for another 3 to 4 years in the schools of Namibia, and obviously other educational sector clients. And I want to keep you in the picture around the 315 million machines that are being dumped and the number of computers that we expect to use realistically using refurbished technologies in schools in Namibia and then further afield on the African continent. The little statistic that you have here, weighted against what you are familiar with in the first world, is that some 60–70% of schools in Namibia do not have electricity, so obviously no technology is of any use to us there anyway. But it's important to note that we only have really one computer for every 280, 300 children and teachers in Namibia. That basically gives the children some 6 minutes per week of IT literacy opportunity, let alone internet access, which I will come to in a moment. SchoolNet's been around for 5 years almost now, and while it has developed an enormous amount of functions, we are now increasingly facing the reality with the number of clients that we support in Namibia, both for internet and for low-cost technology solutions at these schools to provide access to the internet to the youth at these schools, is that to get there, we've gone on this road of fairly human resource impactful sort of lines of operation, and that includes lobbying government, it includes getting donor funding to bring these technologies into Namibia and for redelivery to schools, delivering educational content, increasing the strength of ICT in young out-of-school unemployed youth so that we can use those people as volunteers in a vision to have peer-to-peer training and support built into the model in Namibia. What it comes down to is that we have outsourced a number of our, what were then core functions, to players alongside us. These are equitable partners in Namibia. One of them is the XNet Alliance, which I will talk about briefly, which is an internet service provider, which now in Namibia provides every school in Namibia with the opportunity to fixed rate internet access on a 24-hour, 7 days a week basis at around $32 per month. That's the cheapest internet provision in Africa today, and it's still way too much for most schools to be able to afford. But it's important to note that that was made possible through engagement with a parastatal, a state-owned telecom monopoly, and some other partners to get this to be a reality in Namibia. XNet is for real, and we hope that the model itself will actually be useful to the ITU and certainly the SADC component of the ITU to share with other telecom monopolies in other countries in Africa. What it brings SchoolNet down to now is its core function, which is largely to continue to build, install, maintain, and support those computer technologies in schools throughout Namibia, and do so in a way that we can actually cover the cost of support and ownership at those schools around the country in 3 to 5 year cost of ownership models. It's important to keep that in mind, that in most development sector initiatives in Africa, many of which, 99% of them, are still effectively pilot projects dealing with 1 or 2 schools, 20 schools, 30 schools here and there, is that very few of those initiatives actually pay any attention to the long-term cost of ownership and support of a monster, which is the dependencies we create on these technologies in these school environments. And obviously, when dealing with youth, the dependency phenomenon is far more effective. Take the relationship between cigarettes and 15-year-olds as an example there. Dependencies are what we're creating, and obviously we have to address that on a global scale around how we continue to sustain those dependencies and get people ultimately to pay for them. If one looks at it in the context of what we fundamentally are being seen as today and what we would like to have us seen as in the future. Today, SchoolNet is seen as a donor by schools in Namibia. We would like to get them to see us as a service provider, and in us being a service provider, provide a quality of service that we can actually honor agreements with the schools on. Technical support and service, dealing with 17 to 23-year-old youngsters out of school is generally pretty chaotic. And obviously, while SchoolNet Namibia's refurb center, or let's call it technical service support center today, is still very much run by a young, manageable age group, they themselves have not learned management skills, and obviously that becomes important in us being able to improve the quality of our professional service to the schools of Namibia. To date, we have some 340 schools that are served by SchoolNet. Not all of them are functional at this stage, for various good reasons and bad reasons. But at this stage, every one of them has been provided with technologies by SchoolNet to allow them to have access to the internet on a relatively small scale model of a server using open source LTSP solutions and diskless thin clients in the Linux LTSP model, with a connection in library resource centers, and now increasingly in the actual classrooms, where the computers are not only being used just for internet access anymore, but also for educational literacy training. At this stage, we estimate some 70% of these schools are using the internet on occasion. If you visit our website and go down on the homepage to the transparency link, you will see some indication of where we are at right now. We have a live connection to what schools are connected. Importantly, we have moved forward from being a service provider, an NGO, a welfare organization, a donor, to providing a solution that we believe now, using free and open source solutions, using refurb technologies and a hybrid mixture of new and old, using decent refurb second-hand technologies from the first world to build a model. And the picture you see in front of you is a recent innovation that we started off at schools, what we call our Rose furniture. It's a circle on which we mount our computers, second-hand machinery. We put all the cabling in the middle, and we avoid 80% of the problems we faced before, which in a school environment is largely focused around cables. Cables that are used for boiling water, cables that are used for powering their mobile phones and so on. It's important to realize that we don't just provide technologies and walk away. We provide a general service infrastructure and a support infrastructure that makes it viable for us and the schools to sustain these technologies in circumstances that are not the best. We had a power failure 2 weeks ago in Namibia, a nationwide power failure which caused some 30 schools' equipment to be blown beyond recall. XNet, just very briefly, is this alliance that was created. And XNet, as an alliance created with telecom operators in Namibia, makes it possible for us to now tap into a commercial cross-subsidy system that allows telecom as a money-making operation to share and subsidize the costs of this internet at schools. We now intend this year to do exactly the same with the energy sector in Namibia, which also is monopoly, is also state-owned, and is also making billions of dollars every year with very little return in terms of development plans in remote rural schools of Namibia. To get down to cost of ownership, and the reason why I asked Samir what the cost of such technology, the SimPuter, is. We are now working in conjunction with a number of other players in Africa, and obviously the Global eSchools and Communities Initiative launched at WSIS last year, looking at what would be a tangible 3 to 5 year cost of ownership model and support model that could support schools in remote parts of Namibia and elsewhere in Africa to drive these technologies and to allow these dependencies to evolve into some sort of service relationship. At this stage, noting that the cost to us landed in Namibia, in Namibian dollars, 3,000, which is equivalent to about $100 US at this stage, sorry, the math is a little bit wrong. I'll get back to that now. The reality is that for us to support over 3 to 5 years technologies at schools, we need to compensate for stuff that falls over for direct reason that the equipment that we get from the first world is ropey or faulty and can only be refurbished in dribs and drabs, or it is technology that we acquire for new. At this stage, we're realistically looking at a model that costs us around $20,000 US to build, cost of support over 3 to 5 years. It's not cheap enough yet, and I believe there is a good reason for that, and that we can realistically look at getting more of these technologies that we are presently paying an arm and a leg for in dribs and drabs from the first world down to a net cost to us of around $0 US per unit. The reason for this is that at this stage we are able to acquire through agencies like Computer Exchange and various other partners computers at around $30 to $60 US a pop. Those are dribs and drabs technologies. We cannot